everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot here with my spoiler-filled discussion review for Joker. Now, before I move forward, if you haven't seen the film yet, this video isn't for you. Go watch my non-spoiler review that I did Thursday so you can see what I thought of the film without giving too much away. But if you've seen the film, you're definitely in the right place. We're here to break down this movie, talk about the big things that happened, some things that I didn't like per se, and really dive deep into this film. So before I do that, if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. Make sure you're hitting that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our reviews, TV reviews, trailer reactions, unboxings, and giveaways. So definitely subscribe to our channel. As well as I do these reviews, these spoiler reviews, to have a really deep dive discussion with you all. So comment below. Let me know some of the things you love, some of the things you didn't love, your theories, and all of that stuff in the comment section. With that being said, let's jump into the spoiler discussion review for Joker. As I had mentioned, this is a spoiler review, so again, this is the final warning. We're going to dive into this film. So if this is your first time watching one of my spoiler reviews, what I like to do is, this is a structured review. I'm going to talk about, the beginnings of the movies, the middle and the end, and kind of theorize in between that. So definitely kind of jump on board in that discussion, the comments and discussion in this video. Let me know what you're thinking. So starting off this film, we meet Arthur Fleck. We see kind of his day-to-day life. We see that he is a party clown. He has this relationship with his mother where she's ill. He's taking care of her, and we notice, right off the bat that he's a disturbed individual, and in a sense of, he has this mental healthness, this mental illness. He goes to this care woman, the social worker, and he's having conversation, weekly therapy sessions with her. And in this discussion, she asks him to bring this journal up. And when I said disturbing, we see this journal of kind of, some jokes, some kind of dark thoughts. But then we also see these pictures of like nudity of women, which kind of homages to the fact that there's some loose screws in this guy's head and how he views the world. So again, opening this film, you're really thrown into this situation where you're seeing, again, his day-to-day life. You're seeing the relationship with his mom. You're seeing his therapy sessions. You see how he's kind of handled at his job and things that we kind of go with in his job. But then the film really kicks off the major events where we see him on his job, putting on his makeup and everything, but we see him holding his sign and, everything's for sale, and these kids bully him, we see this in the trailer where he gets hit by the sign, and that's really where things kind of boil up and really kind of see where the dark path of this character is going to go. So transitioning from that moment, again, the first half of the film really kind of builds this character. We see his day-to-day life, we see the struggles that he goes with, and then we kind of go into the darker moments of this film. So we notice we get the first kill from the Joker, or Arthur Fleck, at this point in the film. We see, on his way home, we see Arthur is being mocked or bullied by these three stock Wall Street people that are bothering this woman. The woman looks at Arthur like, "Can you help me?" And as we kind of develop in this film already, in the first half of this film, we see that he has this uncontrollable laugh, and it's a condition that he has, which was played so beautifully by Joaquin Phoenix. And if you've seen interviews by him, you see how he came about this, doing this research on how to come up with this laugh. It took some months to kind of develop this laugh. So as we've seen in this film, which again, the laugh is amazing, but he's uncontrollably laughing and watching these gentlemen, bother this woman. And that's where things kind of kick off. We see the men approach Arthur, and they beat him up, they target him and all that stuff. And then you would think, so the way the scene plays out is, in a sense, this was self-defense as far as Arthur getting beat, because we don't know what the extent of how they could have killed him, we don't know where things could have landed, but, he shoots the two guys on the train, but then this is where he goes dark and sinister, and this is where we see Arthur using one of the guys that was shot in the leg but walked out of the train, using him as kind of like prey. He wanted to take him out. We see him on the steps, he takes him down, but this is really where Arthur kind of builds the persona of Joker. He runs, which is such a beautifully well shot scene where he's running through the streets of Gotham. He goes into the bathroom scene. And normally, you would think a character at that moment would look in the mirror and just really kind of take in what just happened and maybe show some emotional tears. But instead, Arthur does this dance, and he's just really coming to himself and really kind of developing, again, this persona of the Joker. And this is where you're starting to see he's embracing this new persona. He goes to, which we'll talk about Zazie Beetz' character in a little bit, he goes to her house and kisses her. And we're now seeing him start to develop this sense of confidence in himself that he didn't really have in the first half of the film. So transitioning from his, the beginnings of the movie, his first kill, to now where, the film is introducing Thomas Wayne at this point. We notice that his mother, Penny Fleck, is obsessed with Thomas Wayne. And this is where, in my review, I had mentioned a couple times that some of the some of the big reveals, and not necessarily big reveals, but some of the plot points were a little bit predictable, but it did give me a bit of a loop when they, ultimately revealed what the relationship was. But, I was telling Morgan, like, there was a couple times that his mom kept bringing in, we're a family, and then you hear Thomas Wayne say, I treat my old employees, even my past employees, like a family. So I thought that element was definitely going to play a part in the film. But anyway, on to Thomas Wayne. We see that the mother's obsessed with him. He's a candidate running for mayor. She writes him multiple letters every day. He never responds. She tells Arthur to check the mail when he gets home every day. So we see that relationship. But on to, where Arthur and Thomas Wayne kind of clash. We see Thomas Wayne having an interview, and this is where things kind of really become Gotham and the less fortunate versus the rich. Thomas Wayne makes remarks saying that these people are low class and people like that are why he should be mayor before he can help these people out because they need help and things of that nature. So this is where Arthur is kind of looking at Thomas Wayne like, you're looking down upon us. And this is where the messaging of this film kind of hits home a little bit in regards to the reality that we kind of live in today's society, politically speaking and economically speaking, where different classes are treated differently. And not to get too political in this review here, but things of like building a wall to separate some people from one section of the world from to how we live in America. So things like that nature really kind of plays a theme in this film. So again, we kind of see, the tension that Arthur's having towards Thomas Wayne once we introduce him, and we see his remarks that he says on camera. And also, like I said, in my mind, I'm like, okay, family, maybe, I'm thinking, okay, Thomas Wayne had an affair with Arthur's mom, and this is his stepbrother. But again, this is where the twist comes in later on in the film. But, I thought that Thomas Wayne was a very integral part in this film. I thought it was played out beautifully by the actor. So now transition to, you think this is funny. So this is when Arthur and Thomas Wayne actually interact. So prior to that interaction, we see Arthur Fleck go to the Wayne Manor. He sees a young Bruce Wayne. He interacts with him, putting the smile on, giving him flowers. And at that moment, as a Batman fan, you're like, wow, this is the first time that the Batman, the young Batman is meeting his arch nemesis later down the road in the Joker. There was a really fun moment for myself as a comic book fan and a Batman fan. But then we see another Batman character by Alfred come up and tell him to leave him alone. And then, Arthur tells him, I know everything about my mother and Thomas Wayne. And that's where, Alfred tells him that your mother's delusional. That was a lie. This, that, and the other. And he's very upset because he almost wants to take out, he's choking Alfred at that point. But then he sees Thomas Wayne or sees Bruce Wayne and decides to run away and kind of leave it at that. But back to the point of where we get the line, you think this is funny. So Arthur sneaks into this kind of area, or sneaks into where they're having this big event with Thomas Wayne. A lot of the rich people are watching a Charlie Chaplin film, but he sneaks in and he confronts Thomas Wayne and has a conversation with him with, you're my dad, and why, I would love, the way Thomas Wayne was interacting with him is not the reaction that Arthur Fleck wanted. So they have a little bit of a conversation, and he tells him, Thomas Wayne tells him, hey, your mom's delusional. She's crazy. We had to let her go because she was making all these stories, this, that, and the other. And obviously Arthur didn't like that. And as we've seen in the film, when he gets uncomfortable, he has that laugh, which in that point, Thomas Wayne takes it as kind of like, you think I'm a joke. You think this is funny, as he says in the trailer in the film. He punches them, and we kind of get that interaction there. With him, confronting the information that he gets from Thomas Wayne. So from there, we kind of transition into the disturbing revelation that we find out more about Arthur Fleck's mom, Penny, and her situation, that he adopted, Arthur Fleck, and that she had a very dark past with a boyfriend who abused Arthur, left him on a radiator for days. He wasn't fed. His brain, his head was damaged, and we really kind of find out the deep, dark past of his mom, or his adopted parent, or a parent that adopted him in his background. And in doing so, Arthur finds out this information from Thomas Wayne. Then he investigates more and goes to Arkham Asylum, and that's where we get Brian Tyree Henry, and they have their interaction. He takes the file, and that's where things really kind of set. That was like the last straw for Arthur Fleck, and he really kind of goes off the rails because after that point, he goes to his mom's bed, she's responding because most of the film she's in a coma type state, he talks to her and tells him everything that he finds out. And then he says a line that we get in the trailer that we didn't know, obviously, whether that line comes in the film. But he says, I used to think my life was a tragedy, but now it's a joke. And that's where he kills his mom, which was a very interesting moment. I didn't see that scene coming because, again, I was anticipating, it's going to be they're going to play on the mythology of Thomas Wayne being the father of Arthur, but then they put in that twist, and that was a really good twist. And then, like I said, he kills his mom, who we find out is mentally, has some mental health issues herself and has some issues going on her own. And it kind of, even though they're not blood related, that he obviously saw that growing up, and it kind of inherent that type of behavior from Penny Fleck. So from there, we go and kind of transitioning back. We get Zazie Beetz in the film. I know for some people that was kind of their negative for the film was, the relationship, it just seemed too easy. It just it didn't seem authentic. But then we find out the revelation that Arthur was making up all these interactions where she goes to his comic, his stand-up show. She's by his side when when he's visiting his mom, and she's encouraging this type of behavior. But we all know that at this point in this film, it was made up. And then we get the moment when Arthur goes over to her house and says he had a very bad day, which is another nod to the Batman mythology. It's just like Batman, what really separates Batman and Joker in the comics is the Joker just had a bad string of luck and just had a really bad day. He went over the edge, where the Batman, when his parents had died, he could have went the dark route, but he went a different direction. So he says that line to her. And I love that the film kind of leaves that up into our interpretation of what did he do to Zazie Beetz' character. I believe her name was Sophie, I want to say. Did he do something to the little girl and Sophie? Or did he just leave them alone? I love that the film kind of plays that throughout the movie. We get many moments of that. So that was a big reveal. Even though I kind of saw that coming, it's like it's just too easy that their relationship is not as it seems. So I love that reveal that we get in the film. So again, he has mentioned that he has one bad day. At this point, he's lost his job. He finds out his childhood. He finds out about his mom. He finds out about Thomas Wayne. So this is just a more and more added pressure and more of the pipes bursting for Arthur Fleck. And we find out about everything, why he lost his job and the gun that he got from his friend. Or his co-worker. So now this is where the movie, one of my, I don't want to say favorite scenes, but one of the most well put together scenes, because I don't want to say favorite because I'm not endorsing what happens in this scissor scene, but it was really well choreographed and just really well acted. So we see, Arthur gets a call from one of the representatives, from the host of the Murray Franklin show, saying that they want to have you on. Obviously, earlier in the film, we see Murray was making fun of Arthur, and he kind of held that in and really he's like, yeah, I would love to meet him. At first, he didn't, he was, still taking in, he just murdered his mom and all that stuff. But, he wanted to go on the show because he wanted to kind of confront him for mocking him earlier in the movie. So we see that, he's preparing to meet Murray Franklin. He's on his couch, imitating, which I believe that was Justin Theroux, who was the actor that was the guest on the show. But anyway, we see him putting on his makeup and preparing for his appearance on the show that night. But then we get his two co-workers, the little guy that was really nice to him earlier in the film, and then the big guy that gave him a gun and ultimately ratted him out about saying that he bought a gun from him and this, that, and the other. But they're having the conversation. They say, Arthur, we heard about your mom dying, and Arthur says, this is a really well put together scene. He says, I'm celebrating, which again is just like, this guy is just so unhinged, just off the rails at this point. We see Arthur, he grabbed the scissors, they're talking, he confronts the big guy, which, by the way, I can't think of the actor's name, but he's great in Barry, the first season of Barry, but he stabs him in the neck, and from there you think that it's just the extent of that violent scene, but no, he bashes his head in the wall, covered in blood, the wall's in blood, the smaller person is there and obviously doesn't know what to do. Am I going to die? Is he going to let me live? And that was so well played, where Arthur kind of lets him go by, scares him. Obviously he couldn't reach the lock to get him out, and he says to him, you're the only nice person to me, and lets him go about his way. But again, that scene was just so well crafted and so well put together, in a sense of, in that one scene, there was a little bit of comedy at times. There was this horrific, graphic moment, and a little bit of, a humane moment for Arthur, or the Joker at this point in the film, where he lets the guy go because he's nice to him. So just a well-crafted scene. At this point in the film, wrapping up this review and this breakdown, we now have the Joker. He's in full makeup. He goes to the Murray Franklin show. He tells Murray, hey, you called me the Joker a couple weeks ago on your show, so I want you to call me that as I walk out. They agreed to that. He goes on the show, he arrives, they have some back of, he does this whole dance, he kisses the psychiatrist and sits down, and then they really go into conversation. This is where things just go really deep and just really goes dark. So Arthur and Murray are having a conversation, things get a little heated, and then Arthur just flat out says to him, I killed those 3 men, and I'm the reason that this rioting is going on. And Murray, instead of cutting the cameras and ending the conversation from there and having security maybe take him off stage, this is where Murray's like looking at it like, this is TV ratings. Let me dive deeper into this, this interview here. And they kind of have a back and forth. And like I said in the previous, that scissor scenes, he was preparing for that conversation to kill himself. But in this heated conversation, he says to Murray, and I have it here in my notes, he has, let me tell you another joke. What do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? And he shoots Murray in the head, shoots him in the chest. And, amongst that, before we actually get that moment, that scene, that conversation, I think is where Todd Phillips, again, as a director and the writer of this film, a co-writer, really kind of puts, again, another theme in this film where it's just like society back then in the 80s, and definitely still now to date, unfortunately, we have society kind of putting these certain topics and themes and conversations on the back burner. Again, mental health is not taken seriously in today's society, in my opinion. Gun control isn't taken as seriously as it should be. So there's all these different conversations that they're having amongst this, between Murray and Arthur Fleck. That's really kind of topical in today's time. So really well designed scene, but really disturbing. Just like our scissor scene has some good moments as far as that conversation, as the conversation needs to be had in today's society. But then it goes dark when Arthur decides to kill him and shoot him. In the meantime, things are rioting outside of Gotham. People are just going crazy. Cops can't control the people. We see Arthur being taken in a police car. He gets hit by an ambulance, and people take him out of the car, and that's where, the blood is on his face, and he's putting a smile on. We see a little moment of where Thomas Wayne is eventually killed, which is, again, an homage to the Batman lore, how his parents were taken out. Which was beautifully, crafted. Again, we've seen it a million times, but they handled that scene really well. Seeing Thomas Wayne and Martha Wayne being killed in front of Bruce Wayne and the beginnings of the Batman character. And then kind of wrapping up the film here. It wasn't a post-credit scene, but it was kind of a epilogue where we see Joker in the psychiatric ward talking to the psychologist in Arkham, and he laughs and says to her, "You wouldn't understand the joke," and we see the blood on the shoes. So that's where, wrapping up the film. Again, I really enjoyed this film. I was very, when I walked out, me and Morgan were talking about it, we were just, like, the word that I could just think of, it was very interesting. But then when I was writing my notes for my non-spoiler review, and then sitting back thinking about it, I gave it a 5 out of 5 because I think it is such a well-crafted film with things to say in today's times, with a great Oscar-worthy performance by Joaquin Phoenix, a great direction by Todd Phillips, and great writing by him and his co-writer, and just a well put together film. And it's just so telling that this character, the Joker, has so many different iterations. It just tells you the layers and the depth of this character and where people kind of go in this character. And I think Joaquin Phoenix has definitely kind of put himself in that category as far as one of the best Jokers that we've ever seen, up there with the Heath Ledger or Jack Nicholson or Mark Hamill and so on and so forth. He had his own take on it, and this is his own film. None of these guys had their own movie. They were the co-stars to Batman, but this is the Joker's spotlight. And again, I said in my non-spoiler review, this isn't glorifying mental health issues or glorifying, I don't want to say glorifying, this isn't glorifying the violence that sometimes happens with people that are mentally, have mental health issues or don't have mental health issues. It isn't glorifying any of that. It's just putting together a story of this character that we know, and Todd Phillips showing you what it looks like in this grounded universe and just telling his story. And again, when I said in my non-spoiler review, it's not a director's job to tell you what's right or wrong or this is right or wrong. They're just telling you their story, and they're leaving it up to you to decide that ultimate question for you. So I thought it was a well-crafted film. 5 out of 5 for me. It's definitely in my top 2, might even be my number 1 so far. And we got some more films I'm very excited about in the coming months. But beautiful film in a sense of how it was put together, and I think it is a film that we're going to talk about years from now, and I'm excited to see where the DC universe goes in regards to these one-off films and these villains having these highlighted movies, and potentially maybe superheroes getting a more darker, more serious, grounded approach, and not having that $200 million type of approach to these films, superhero films. So that's my spoiler review. Again, I really enjoyed this film, and I really wanted to pose this question for you guys before I leave. Was this film real? In the sense of, we know at the beginning of the film, Arthur had the conversation with the social worker, and she says, you know why you're here. And we see him bang his head on the door, and then it ties back to the end of the conversation he has. And we know he's this unreliable narrator of the film. Was this film real? Was it not real? I think it was real up to certain points. You know, obviously the Zazie Beetz thing wasn't real. When he was dreaming about him being on the Murray Show, and he was watching a show on the bed of his mom, you know, he dreamed about that. So I think that most of the film was fake. But it does pose a question. What do you all think in the comments? Let me know. Thank you for watching this 20-minute review. If you stick around to the end, I appreciate it. Again, comment below. Let me know what you like, what you didn't like, your theories in the comments below. And do you want to see a Joker 2, or are you happy with this one-off? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell. Stay up to date with our latest videos. Follow us on all of our social media accounts, including Instagram, where we go live once a week, and we post at least 5 to 6 times a week talking about movies, shows, and everything in between. So definitely follow us there. Thank you for watching this review, and we'll see you on the next video.